Hello. In this presentation, we're going to compare Gagne's conditions of learning theory to the Savvy-7 research process model. Robert Gagne was an experimental psychologist who came up with his conditions of learning theory in 1962. The theory was originally intended for military training. The most remarkable aspects of the theory are that it identifies 5 categories of learning: verbal, intellectual, cognitive, motor skills, and attitudes, and states that different instruction is required for different types of learning. Gagne's theory also identifies learning hierarchies and requires that tasks be completed at each level before the next level can be attempted. Perhaps the well-defined structure and requirements made it well-suited to a military environment. In 1965, Gagne published his book, Conditions of Learning, and in it, his theory was expanded to instructional design for adult learners. In this slide, we're going to go through what Gagne called the 9 instructional events, and we will discuss them in terms of how a teacher librarian could apply them in a lesson. First, the librarian will get the attention of learners. Next is letting them know what the objective of the lesson is going to be. A great way for a librarian to do this is to ask a question. The objective would be to answer that question. Then a review of the background knowledge they need to activate so that they can move forward in the learning. The librarian then presents a stimulus. This can take the form of content that relates to the objective or the question. The next step is to guide learning by showing students how they can meet the objective. The librarian can do this by providing students with resources that will help them answer the initial question. The librarian then elicits performance. They may ask the students to create a knowledge product that addresses the objective of the learning. The librarian checks the students' work and provides feedback. In assessing performance, the librarian gives the students some kind of score for their work. To enhance retention, the librarian invites students to share what they learned. How did they manage to meet the objective? So that's Gagne's 9 instructional events. Now let's talk about Savvy-7. Savvy-7 is an inquiry-based research process model based on questions. In the beginning, students come up with what's called a SMART question. This question is intended to go more deeply into a general topic. In this first step of formulating their SMART question, students will identify their background knowledge and come up with search terms. Choosing resources. Students are going to identify the resources available to them in their school library or their homes or on the internet. They need to choose resources that will align with their question and that will be accessible to them. Students are going to use library skills to find information within the resources they've chosen. This can be conducting an interview, reading through a primary source, or coming up with and using alternate search terms. This step is where the student thoroughly consumes the information they found and they save the information that was valuable in their search, keeping citations along the way. Here, the student applies critical thinking skills to evaluate all aspects of their information to ensure that it's up-to-date, credible, bias-free, relevant, and that they have enough information to answer their question. In sharing, the student organizes their information, writes about what they found, and comes up with a conclusive answer to the question in their chosen format: a paper, presentation, video, website, etc. The student then goes back and evaluates both the process and the final product of their search. Did they meet the requirements of whatever rubric or guidelines were assigned? Did they answer the question effectively? Did they meet the needs of their target audience? Did they support their conclusion effectively? Did they cite their sources correctly? So that's an overview of Gagne's instructional events and of the Savvy-7 research process model. Now to connect the two. Gagne's first 3 instructional events align to the first question in the Savvy 7, which is, what is the question? In answering this first question, students have received or created a learning objective, and they begin to activate their background knowledge. Gagne's 4th event, which is present stimulus or present content, connects with question 2 of Savvy 7, which is, what resources should I use? This is when the librarian would be introducing to students the resources they can use to do their research and create their knowledge products. Gagne's 5th event, Guide Learning, aligns with Savvy 7's questions 3, 4, and 5, where the librarian will be guiding students in finding, gathering, and selecting their information. The students are doing the work, while the librarian is available to help them identify the resources they should use, collect the information, and filter out what isn't relevant. The 6th event in Gagne's theory is eliciting performance, and this aligns with Savvy 7's 6th question, which involves sharing the learning. In this event, the students are sharing their knowledge products. Gagne's 8th and 9th events, which are assessing performance and enhancing retention and transfer, connect with Savvy 7's question 7. In 7, how do I evaluate my work? Students are assessing their performance, but they're also going back through each of the 7 questions to make sure they answered them effectively, which will contribute to the students' retention of what they learned about how to do research. Gagne's theory is important to library instruction because it gives very clear steps that a teacher librarian can always fall back on to guide their practice. The 9 instructional events align pretty clearly with the AASL standards as well, as they are built on inquiry and require students to collect and organize resources and engage with the learning by creating examples that satisfy the learning objective. What follows on this slide are more resources and guides for Gagne's conditions of learning theory and his 9 instructional events. Thank you for listening.